Earth was beset by the full might of the Galactic Empire, a force the planet had never before encountered. Their massive, glimmering armada of ships floated overhead, blotting out the cities and countryside. Their advanced weaponry and energy shields hummed ominously as they traversed the periphery of Earth's atmosphere, laying to waste anything caught in their path. They were a brutal instrument, and their leader spoke to the planet like a civilization that had already subdued untold worlds. "Your technology is antiquated," the commander announced through the Empire's loudspeakers. "Your resistance is futile. Earth's future now belongs to the Galactic Empire." The humans, panicked and in near chaos, had no idea how to fight back. Their governments collapsed, and some major cities plunged into chaos. Initially, there was little resistance to the Empire's forces. Unprepared for an invasion on this scale, humans scrambled to organize efforts to defend. But no matter how hard they tried, their weapons simply didn't support the Empire's advanced technology. However, there was one figure who stood firm in the chaos. General David Walker, a battle-hardened veteran of countless conflicts, sheathed to the invasion from deep inside Earth's penultimate military seat of power. His brow creased as he watched the Empire's attack play out before him. A ferocious determination burned in him, but also something more, a sense of hope. He recognized that humanity had overcome impossible odds before and lived. He wouldn't allow that to change now. Even though the Empire's forces vastly outmatched Walker in terms of firepower, he knew one thing Earth had going for it: its land. For centuries, human soldiers had endured wars in the most brutal of environments, mastering the art of using any piece of technology, any tract of land, to their benefit. This ancient knowledge would come in handy once more. The Empire, smug in their technological superiority, had no clue what awaited them. In the following days, as the Empire pushed forward, it dawned on Walker that the most strategic investment Earth could make wasn't greater volumes of tanks or fewer volume fighter jets. It was in something the Empire had already ridiculed: antiquated artillery. Mortar, WW1, WW2 relics considered obsolete by the invaders, and with good reason, slow even to load and barely suppressive in comparison to the Empire's advanced plasma cannon and laser rifles. But those same mortars, refurbished and upgraded with modern munitions and targeting technology, were about to prove integral. The general wasted no time. He had a small team of soldiers doing the work of converting these outdated weapons into more formidable systems. They would set up hidden emplacements in key locations, utilizing the terrain to their advantage and waiting for the day when the Empire would least expect it. The humans wouldn't just brawl but strategize and ambush. The Empire continued to sweep through city after city as the weeks dragged on. Their troops, dressed in advanced equipment and armed with plasma, scoffed at any human brave enough to resist. "This is your last stand," they taunted, chuckling at the sight of the old-fashioned artillery that bore down on the front lines. They dismissed it as primitive, antiquated, and obsolete, certain that their high-tech weaponry would easily crush these pitiful human defenses. But General Walker understood the worth of those mortars. To the Empire, they were little more than historical curiosities. To the humans, potential game-changers. Old as they were, they still packed a wallop, and they had just been equipped with the latest technology, including high-tech targeting and big explosives. Walker had witnessed firsthand how rapidly a fight could swing to people who knew their surroundings more intimately than their foes did. The mortars were soon to prove the case in the most dramatic way. With the Empire's forces advancing deeper and deeper into human territory, the general's plan was set in motion. The last parts of the human defense fell into place, the mortars hidden and poised to fire. The troops, though outnumbered by the Empire's mile-long lines of soldiers, were bound together in fervor for the general's vision. They realized they were battling not only for survival but for humanity's dignity. This would not be a victory of superior technology over raw human willpower, but rather the victory of raw human willpower over the one thing the Empire seemed to have forgotten: the indomitable human spirit. The night before the battle, Walker gave a speech to his men. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of the stakes. They believe they have already won. When their technology makes them invincible, they will be free. But they're wrong. They're forgetting one thing. And humanity has always found a way to fight back. We've been doing it for centuries and we'll do it again now. We don't have their technology, but we have something much more powerful, our will to survive. The troops looked at him and nodded, getting more cocked with each passing second. It wasn't simply winning a battle, it was about sending a message. It was about sending the Empire a message that Earth would not be dragged quietly into the night. The soldiers settled in for the coming confrontation, a quiet confidence building. It was the Empire that had underestimated them, and now they would witness what a mistake that had been. Human beings, for all their flaws, possessed something far more powerful than sophisticated weaponry. It had ingenuity, resourcefulness, and a deep, unyielding determination to keep what belonged to it, to defend the people and possessions within its territory. The Empire's error was believing that technology, in and of itself, could decide the outcome of this war. This only reduced their likelihood of winning, though the humans were about to demonstrate that a warrior's heart cannot be quantified by the advancement of his tools. The stage was set. Their overconfidence in the galactic superiority would soon be met with a weapon most them least expected. The old mortars, dismissed as outdated, savage weapons, were on the verge of playing a crucial role in a battle that would alter the history of the planet. And as the first mortar was loaded, General Walker knew one thing for certain: this fight, this victory, would show that humanity was much more capable than the Empire could ever have imagined. This was only the beginning. The Empire's army moved deep into the heart of human territory at a disturbing pace. The massive, high-tech army moved through cities and towns, reducing all resistance beneath their superior firepower. Their men, dressed in impenetrable armor, and armed with plasma rifles, sneered at the idea of human artillery holding any water against their superior tech. They were able to dispose of small military units without even breaking a sweat, and generally, humanity didn't have a real counter to these superior weapons. With each passing day, the human defenses crumbled further. The Empire's commander, confident of his victory, ordered the complete subjugation of Earth. "These primitive humans believe they can stand against us with their outdated weaponry," he sneered. "Let them try. We shall show them the power of the Galactic Empire." Humanity's remaining forces retreated into smaller pockets of resistance, holding out in locations they knew best: their urban areas, their rural zones, places they could use to their advantage. General Walker, from his command center, watched the Empire's forces sweep through the planet's major cities, his mind racing. He knew the odds were against them. The Empire's tech was unstoppable, but there was one thing they had failed to consider: the terrain and the mortars. It was a plan that had been set weeks before, but today was the day. Well concealed in the destroyed old cities and forgotten areas of the country, the mortars were hidden. The Empire dismissed them as the remnants of ancient times, but the humans turned them into something much deadlier. With modern targeting systems and explosive shells, the erstwhile antique mortars were ready to take on the might of the Empire. However, it wasn't about the mortars alone, it was about the way the mortars would be used by humans. The army of the Empire began their move toward what they believed was the easiest defendable place, a small city located in the outer bounds of human resistance. With their high-tech weapons, they thought that nothing was going to stand in their way, but the soldiers, feeling at the top of the world, swaggered into the city with an air of invincibility, unaware that there were hidden traps awaiting them. Their strategy was simple: obliterate anything in their way. What they didn't know was that General Walker had been looking for this moment. The moment they crossed into the kill zone, they will be right in the center of humanity's greatest strength, to adapt, and how to use everything at their disposal in ways the enemy will never predict. As the soldiers of the Empire march further into the heart of the city, human forces start their deadly dance. At first, there were the occasional pockets of human resistance that attracted the Empire's soldiers' attention for a little too long: tough human opponents who fought tenaciously before being overwhelmed in short order. They were diversions, only, intended to keep the attention of the Empire's soldiers engaged on what now seemed like simply another urban battle, while the people behind the curtain prepared for battle. And without warning, then, the mortars opened. The first shell hit the ground with a deafening crash, sending shockwaves through the city. The Empire's soldiers froze. The blast tore through their ranks, causing chaos and panic among them. Their advanced armor did little to protect them from the force of the explosion, and the shockwave knocked several soldiers off their feet. Communications were immediately disrupted, and the Empire's soldiers scrambled to regroup. But they weren't ready for what was coming next. Each second passed with explosions bursting through streets, as the armor columns of the Empire were pulled asunder, while its soldiers went into hiding behind buildings. All those confident army men were forced on the backs, and their machines seemed useless on that day, while an unexpected shell-shock-like barrage was directed upon them with old mortars that had just been turned out into instruments for pure destruction at the hands of these humans. The commander of the Empire was furious. He had expected an easy victory, one that would crush the spirit of humanity and prove their technological superiority. But instead, his troops were caught in a trap, their advanced weapons and armor offering little protection against the barrage of explosives that rained down from the sky. He quickly called for a retreat, but it was too late. The humans had already taken the upper hand, and the Empire's soldiers were left running for their lives from the destruction. The mortars kept firing, and the havoc ensued in the Empire's ranks. Each boom destroyed their advanced technology, knocking their communication system off, disarming their weapons, and destroying all they had planned. Forces that were unstoppable were now aimless chaos. Panic was emboldened among them as they struggled to regroup and plot a counterattack. Then came the second wave. The human general had expected the Empire to withdraw and had readied himself for it. The mortars accompanied the Empire's forces as they retreated to relatively safer ground. They had been placed in unexpected places, where no one expected them to be. The second barrage came from behind, catching retreating soldiers unawares. It was not just the power of the mortars but the precision with which they were being fired. The humans had transformed an old, forgotten weapon into a tool of devastating efficiency. The soldiers of the Empire never even got a chance to react. Their once spotless armor, once as proof against human arms, now shattered and useless. Their weapons failed under the repeated barrage, and they lost their tactical advantage. A sure-win battle for them was now turning out to be a desperate battle for survival. The bustle of confusion was all around General Walker as he calmly stood at his command center, watching the battle. His face was firm, unyielding, with the task in question. The fight was far from over, but humanity had made its point. They should never have underestimated this Earth. Walker knew that this victory would not be enough to end the war, but it had sent a message across the battlefield. Humanity was not to be underestimated. Still, the mortars kept on firing, and the once confident soldiers of the Empire stood at the point of defeat. They had not any idea what hit them, and by the time they realized it, damage had already been done. The humans had grasped their own history, what the Empire had mocked, as their best weapon. For the first time in history, the Space Imperium, once considered invincible, had to rethink everything they knew about warfare. The Empire's retreat began in an almost chaotic scramble. Their once unshakable confidence had evaporated, replaced by shock and confusion. The battle, which they had assumed would be over in a matter of hours, had stretched on, and the sudden onslaught of mortars had taken a heavy toll. Their advanced weaponry, designed to overpower any adversary, had been neutralized with startling efficiency. The very technology that had made the Empire so feared across the galaxy was now failing them. With the first mortar barrage still reverberating, the Empire reassembled itself, trying to rally its forces. But the damage had already been done. The command structure had been broken down, lines of communication severed, and armor, once impenetrable, had become nothing more than scrap metal. Human forces, outnumbered and outgunned, struck a blow at the Empire that it didn't see coming. From their command ships hovering above, the leaders of the Empire sat in stunned amazement as their forces began to falter. They had grossly underestimated the tenacity of humanity, believing that always, no matter what, advanced technology would triumph over simple human ingenuity. The ancient mortars were but a mere annoyance, a desperate last stand by a dying civilization. They were wrong. The mortars had proved far more than that. As the Empire's troops tried to recover, they found themselves in the face of more of the same. With each new mortar shell, They were sent rocking through their ranks, tearing at their weaponry and causing further disarray. They had been taught to expect victory, but they were now forced into a retreat that was all too humiliating. Their soldiers, who had laughed at the prospect of old Earth artillery, now found themselves scrambling to escape the barrage, their superiority nullified by a weapon they had dismissed as obsolete. Despite their advanced technology, the Empire had failed to understand one key factor: the strength of human determination. The human general, knowing that the battle was not yet won, ordered his forces to keep the pressure on. He knew that the mortars gave them a strategic edge, but it was only a matter of time before the Empire recovered and regrouped. He knew the humans had to act faster than the invaders could recover. The Empire's retreat became frenzied by the second barrages of mortars. Soldiers started to pile one another in their attempts to get away from the relentless bombardment. Their advanced energy shields flickered and failed under the repeated shocks. The once pristine soldiers, whose uniforms had once been symbols of the Empire's dominance, were now covered in dust and grime, their equipment barely functional. The Empire, which had once looked down on humanity as inferior, was now fighting to hold onto its pride. General Walker had a plan that was working like a charm. The Empire's men were not equipped to deal with this kind of threat. Continuous, relentless fire from the mortars had made them go crazy, and the technological superiority of the Empire, once its greatest asset, was now proving to be the greatest liability. The humans played to their strength, using the knowledge of terrain and resourcefulness to turn the battle around. But the Empire, though shocked, was not a force easily defeated. As the mortars continued to rain down, the Empire's commanders issued new orders. They knew they had to adjust their strategy, and quickly. The retreat became more organized, but the damage was still done. The human forces, though not as technologically advanced, had managed to disrupt the Empire's plans in ways they had not thought possible. The shockwaves from the mortars still resonated through the city streets, and the Empire's soldiers were still reeling from the destruction. Their retreat was marked by a palpable sense of defeat, a feeling they had not expected when they first set foot on Earth. The humans had proven themselves capable of more than mere survival. They had shown that they could fight back with unexpected ferocity and cunning. Despite the damage that the Empire had suffered, General Walker knew that this was not the end of it. The mortars had won a significant victory for humanity, but more importantly, this was just a small victory in a much greater war. The Empire would regroup and return with even greater force, but now the message has been delivered. The mortars, once made light of by others, have shown that it would take all the technology invented by man not to replace their ingenuity or strength of character. The very Empire soldiers, once so confident and arrogant, now wondered about everything that they had assumed was true. The leadership of the Empire realized that their technology was not as foolproof as they had imagined. They started to question all their assumptions about human civilization. If these primitive mortars could cause such havoc, what else could Earth's inhabitants be hiding? What other forgotten technologies or hidden strengths could they bring to bear in this conflict? The retreating soldiers, now more wary and cautious, would never again underestimate humanity's ability to adapt and fight back. General Walker stood at his command center, watching as the Empire's forces fell back. He knew that the battle was far from over, but he also knew that humanity had just delivered a resounding message. The Empire had been forced to retreat, and Earth had shown that it could defend itself in ways the invaders never expected. As the dust settled, Walker permitted himself a rare moment of reflection. The Empire had mocked humanity's old artillery, dismissing it as outdated and ineffective. Yet, those very mortars had been the key to this victory. It wasn't the weapons themselves that had won the day, but the humans' ability to take what seemed obsolete and turn it into something formidable. They had taken a piece of history and used it to shape the future. This victory was not simply a victory at the tactical level, but symbolized everything humanity had fought for: resilience, ingenuity, and refusal to be underestimated. The battle proved that Earth was no ordinary planet, and that against whatever enemy may be technologically superior, there is always room for human creativity and determination to take over. The Empire forces didn't know what they were up for. They had been caught unprepared by the efficiency of mortars. They never would be any more. Earth presented a considerable challenge, and the Empire would never learn to forget this lesson. And as the last remnants of the Empire's force began their retreat, General Walker knew one thing: the battle had really just been getting started. But humanity had already proven it could stand toe-to-toe with the most advanced civilization that the galaxy ever knew. The Empire's retreat was not just a tactical failure, it was a blow to their pride. The once unshakable confidence that had fueled their invasion now lay in tatters, shattered by the unexpected might of human ingenuity. General Walker stood in the aftermath of the battle, surrounded by the wreckage left behind by the Empire's retreating forces. The mortars had done their job, but it was more than just the mortars that had sealed the victory. It was indomitable human willpower that had done it. As Walker looked out at the battlefield, he could see the dazed looks on his soldiers' faces. The Empire had not underestimated them, and now the invaders were retreating. Their once coordinated forces were now in disarray, frantically trying to reorganize as they retreated to their ships. The general's mind was already working, calculating the next steps. This victory was crucial, but it was only one battle in a much larger war. Human forces hadn't won by just a number. They were outnumbered and outgunned by the enemy forces, but the familiarity with the territory, knowledge of history, and ability to be flexible in their situation helped win over the enemy forces. The mortars, which the Empire had ridiculed, had proved to be the perfect tool for the situation. They had been the key to breaking an Empire's offensive, and the message was sent loud and clear: humanity could not be underestimated. These victories sent waves throughout the universe. News of the Empire's retreat spread like wildfire, and hope surged in the hearts of people who had long believed their planet was doomed. The Empire's forces had been forced to retreat, and the humans had proven to the universe that they were far from the weak and helpless beings the invaders assumed them to be. It wasn't just a victory on the battlefield, it was a victory for humanity's spirit. But Walker knew that the Empire would not let that happen easily. The retreat was a setback, not a decisive defeat. The Empire would regroup itself, recalibrate, and come back with greater force. That is something General Walker understood, and he didn't waste time while celebrating the victory. There was still much work to be done. They had tasted defeat, but that would only fuel the resolve to crush humanity once and for all. War was far from over. This victory, though, sent a powerful message. It showed that even at such odds against them, they had been able to fight back. It was not just the mortars but determination, creativity, and the will to survive that made humanity such a formidable opponent. The Empire had come to Earth thinking they were invincible, but they had learned a lesson: technology alone would not win the war. It was the human spirit that had turned the tide. Weeks passed and the humans began to rebuild. They strengthened their defenses, rearmed themselves, and readied for the next inevitable wave of Empire forces. But the atmosphere had changed. The people of Earth were no longer defeated, they were now emboldened. The Empire had been beaten back once, and there was no reason why they couldn't do it again. Humanity had proven that it could stand its ground, and that was a very powerful message in itself. The Empire's leadership, though shaken, refused to admit defeat. The shock of their first encounter with Earth's defenses would not be easily forgotten. They would return, better prepared and more determined to crush the human resistance once and for all. But this time, they would approach the battle with more caution, knowing that they were facing an enemy capable of turning even the most outdated weaponry into a powerful force. For General Walker, the battle was a victory, but it was also a reminder. The humans had won this time, but they could not afford to be complacent. The Empire would come back stronger, and the next battle would be even harder. But for now, he allowed himself a brief moment of satisfaction. Earth had won a major victory, and the message had been delivered. The humans were not to be underestimated. As the human forces prepared for the next phase of the war, they carried with them the knowledge that they had proven something invaluable. The Empire had underestimated their resourcefulness and resilience, and that mistake had cost them dearly. But now, humanity knew that they could stand up to even the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. They had the strength, the resolve, and the ingenuity to survive, and to win. The retreat of the Empire was more than a military loss. It included shifting the balance of power. When the Empire lost a battle, it gave a message to the entire galaxy that Earth was no longer to be neglected or ignored as a planet. The Empire realized their technology, despite the continued advances, could be overcome. Perhaps, rightly so. The old, antiquated mortars had become the emblem of humanity's unexpected strength, and left their mark on the psyche of the Empire. As General Walker sat watching the humans rebuild, he knew the war was far from over. However, he also understood that Earth had shown something the Empire could never unknow, that mankind is adaptive and innovative, always willing to resist the greatest adversaries. The Empire had arrived expecting to easily win over Earth. What they received instead was a planet unwilling to surrender without resistance. And as human forces prepared to face whatever came their way, it was with a newfound sense of purpose. Mortars had won the battle, but it was the spirit of humanity that carried the day. The Empire was defeated for the time being, but Earth sent a message into the galaxy, which would be echoing for years: never underestimate human determination. The war may not have ended, but humankind had proven that it could hold its ground against the greatest powers to ever exist in the galaxy. The Empire's withdrawal was a foreshadow of the near end,